All right, this is the group video presentation for exegetical methods of preaching for Dr. Wang Loi Singh on the text Proverbs 2 verses 20 to 22. And the group is Jonathan Reish, Justin Copeland, and Cody Gustafson. And this is Jonathan Reish speaking. First, let's take a quick look at the text of this passage. So you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. So when trying to come up with a big idea, a preaching big idea or a thesis for this text, this is what our group came to. Those who follow the example of the righteous will be blessed because of it, or as a result of following the example of the righteous, we will be blessed. So there were several reasons that brought us to this conclusion, and we will take a look at those in Logos. I will pull up that. So first of all, in the Lexham High Definition Old Testament, I'll pull that up here, you can see that these verses are outlined, verses 20, 21, and 22. Verse 21 is listed as support. So it's supporting the idea, the assertion made in verse 20. So, and that's why they're indented the way they are. So verses 21 and 22 can't be taken apart from verse 20 because they are further expounding upon it, explaining and fleshing out the idea. And in this case, it's giving us the reason for doing what's said in verse 20. Next, looking also here at the HD Old Testament, so we only have one section, one phrase in this passage that is marked for emphasis, and that is the phrase "from the land" in verse 22. So this idea of land is important in understanding this passage. So we'll take a quick look at a text comparison on this. We have several texts here. The NASB translates it as land in verse 21 and then land in verse 22. The King James Version uses land in verse 21 but says shall be cut off from the earth in verse 22, so kind of giving the idea that they'll be killed or they'll die. And ESV, land and land. Same with the NLT, HCSB, and NIV. So really it's only the King James that gives the idea of earth in verse 22. So we'll take another look here. Back at our English Standard Version, looking at this word land, it's important to see, oh no, my Logos is slow. All right. To see what the sense is that Logos gave. And the sense that Logos gave is land as territory. Territory, so not earth like the King James Version did. So I'll take a look at the Bible word study on this one. Under senses, we see that land as territory is the main way that this term gets used in the Old Testament, and not necessarily a nation, but more like a plot of land, a location. And so, naturally for an Israelite writer, this is talking about the land of Israel, the promised land. So, what we had to deal with now was how do we take it from this concept that is very culturally linked land to something in our own, something that is timeless. And that's where we came to blessing, because the land functioned as blessing for the people of God in the Old Testament. So that's how we understood it here. So now down to the necessary application. This is what we came to. Well, the standard of truth doesn't come from the godly people we know or those of history. Looking to their example is a key element in living righteously ourselves. So that's verse 20. And now we must be intentional about following the example of the righteous people in our lives because we know that God blesses the righteous. So we use the latter abstraction to come to this idea of blessing as a result of following the example of the righteous. And that is our presentation.